Hello, thanks for joining me. Day 17 of Noah's bike build. Time to build a holder for the iPad that's going to be used on the sim. The iPad mini wants to be mounted just in front of the front top fork yoke. Not too close, I don't want any banging heads, any riders leaning forward and banging the heads, but I want it to be accessible so people can touch the screen to start the race game. Just to cover the bases, it's going to be used for MotoGP type circuit games where everybody's going one way. I'd like to teach my grandson racecraft. It's all about leaning, throttle and maybe a bit of braking. So that's where the iPad's attached to the bike. So when we lean the bike, and the mechanism for that is yet to be finalised, we're waiting on parts, but anyway, back to today's build. When the bike leans, the iPad mini will lean, and the gyro inside the iPad mini will affect the game. That's the theory. I was tempted to buy an off-the-shelf iPad mini holder or bracket, but it was never going to satisfy everything I wanted, so time to break out the 2mm aluminium, cut it to shape, a few pop rivets, a few drilled holes, a lot of thinking, a few cups of tea, and why not make it a bracket so that if you were playing an iPad game sat on the floor, the stand would support the iPad. So it was going to be dual purpose, functional, pretty safe, well, very safe, and it could easily attach to a second bracket mounted on the bike, thus making the bike a racing simulator. Parts had arrived, parts called iPad triggers. Imagine the trigger of a gun, and imagine transferring that motion from a trigger motion to a press on an iPad screen. And if you touch the right part of the screen, the motorcycle accelerates within the game. So iPad triggers were going to solve that way of accelerating and eventually the iPad trigger would be operated by a similar cable to a throttle cable. I've ordered a second cable because I don't want to cut up the working bike as it is, so I'm just going to disconnect the existing working throttle cable, make a customized version when this new throttle cable arrives, and when you twist the twist grip, because we're trying to keep realism, we're trying to teach a youngster what does what on a racing motorcycle. When you twist the throttle via cable, it'll operate this trigger and touch the screen with a pressure pad. That's the theory. Time to get making. The only issue really was where to drill through the trigger handle to attach it to any custom bracket. So I disassembled it, took photos which will always come in handy should I need it in the future. Saw that the simple mechanism had plenty of space for me to drill and not touch any delicate parts, and that's what I did. It was a case of toing and froing between the workshop and the worktop in my house where the bike stood. You cut a bit of alloy, you drill a hole, you bend it, you try it, you alter it, you add to it, you change it, and so on. The bracket evolved and it became a stand for the iPad. As mentioned earlier, if he was to play any other game on the iPad, this little alloy stand would be attached and come in handy. It adds a little bit of structural strength, but the main thing is it's a safe stand. Then it was a case of same again, where do I mount the whole of the bracket? I decided the centre fork spindle. One drawback to this, if I was to tighten up, I would invariably stop the steering from turning, and I've decided when the bike is in simulator mode with the brackets attached and the iPad, we don't need steering, and when the bike is used as a motorbike, i.e. under power, fitting a chain and sprocket and everything associated, then the bracket would be removed anyway. So it's a compromise and something that'll have to be, the information will have to be passed on to any new owner, i.e. my son, who will have to maintain this because they live 300 miles away and I won't be there to strip and build it. So that's the only compromise, that the bracket will have to come off and on when the bike transforms from a simulator to a working motorcycle. The photos are pretty self-explanatory, just me bending aluminium, drilling holes, populating things, making it up as I go along, and then ending with the brackets attached to the bike, the game running, and me manually operating the trigger. The cable isn't attached yet, I'm waiting for the new throttle cable, but I'm confident that that's going to be achievable. So it was a case of passing the time waiting for the next parts to arrive, but it was a worthwhile job and it had to be done because the simulator does need the game tablet. Hope you enjoyed this short video and join me again soon when I'm creating more mayhem on the sim. Thanks for watching.